I'm very excited. This is something new that we are doing, and I'm really, really excited that you guys are here to see see what we're doing. This is AICA, the AI in College Admission NACAC Special Interest Group. We have invited a few people that participated in the recent NACAC conference, and they presented this session at NACAC live there. But as we know, a lot of people either weren't able to attend the conference, or even there's five things going on at once that you want to see, when you're there. So whether you were attending the conference and you just weren't able to attend this session, or you weren't able to attend the conference, we are excited to bring this to a larger audience here virtually. And we're recording this session so that we can even continue to share it live on our YouTube channel. So today we have with us two college counselors. We have with us Scott Kaminkowicz. Can you?
Kaminkowicz.
Yeah, can you say it again?
Kaminkowicz.
Kaminkowicz. Thank you, Kaminkowicz. And he is the one of the directors of college counseling in Honolulu at the Olani School. And
Yo.
we also have with us Michelle Rasich, and she is here with us today. She is the director of college counseling, and she's at the Roland Hall School there. So we're really excited. That's their day job, but in addition to that, they are deeply thinking about AI in college admission and what it's doing, within our profession. So today they're going to be presenting to us as an audience their session that was done live, and now we're going to be seeing it virtually here, leading the way how college counselors can guide ethical AI use. So I'm going to let you guys take it over. A couple housekeeping things here. Please feel free to add your questions as we go. I hope there will be a few minutes at the end that we could, have a little discussion that could be led by the questions that you have here joining us today. So you'll see a Q&A box there. Feel free to share. You can share anonymously or you can share with your name attached. Either way is great. So feel free to do that as we go. I'm going to hand it over to you now, Scott and Michelle. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'm really thrilled to be here and being presenting with you all, and I'm just really stoked to also just be working with Michelle. She's just like one of the greatest people in this, and we've had really wonderful discussions, and I look forward to sharing them with you all today. So yeah, as Emily said, my name is Scott Kaminkowicz. I'm at the Iolani School in Honolulu, Hawaii. And Michelle, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for carving out time when I know that it is, wow, it's crunch time on in our world, regardless of whether you're on the high school or the college side. And so I really do appreciate you joining us. And yes, I'm Michelle Rasich, and I'm the co-director of college counseling at Roland Hall in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah, no, and so yeah, I too am very thankful that you're here. I'm still feeling little bit groggy from November 1st and getting everything in from there. But again, like we're here to push on and, as always for our students and making sure that they're well prepared for what's out there. So today through this conversation, I'm hoping for a few things. Hopefully by the end of the day, or by the end of this conversation, you have a better idea of how to craft effective AI prompts. Explore student-facing exercises that can enhance rather than diminish personal reflection, and then learn how to shape AI use in ways that preserve intellectual growth, which I think we all are really aiming for in this process. And so I'll start with a little bit like I'm gonna, this is a slightly altered version of this presentation. And Michelle doesn't even know about this part, but like I have a few secrets when it comes to AI. This is probably my like 15th presentation on AI. I've given a lot of these, and I will say my little secret to AI, and something I'm hesitant to tell you guys, but I feel like is very important is I sometimes wish AI never existed. Like I want you to know that like I have been out there touting the virtues of AI and all of its benefits, but there are moments too, like so man, I want you to feel like if you're feeling at unease at some of these points, like that's totally warranted. Like I feel that too. And there's moments where I'm like, man, it is tough to be out there, and there's definitely things that have made this job tougher. And there's also part of me that doesn't want this technology to advance any further. Like I'm hoping that we hit peak AI. I also realize that is a pipe dream, most likely not going to happen. And so you're probably wondering, like, why do I talk about this stuff? Why do I look into this stuff if I'm so, that's how I feel about this? Well, part of it is like, well, here, it's here. My students are digesting it. They are inundated, with just from TikTok alone, and inundated with AI content that is giving them information that they are presenting as true, and having to learn how to discern this information. And they're going to have to learn how to deal with this. AI is not going to be something we're going to be escaping. And I hope we don't escape it. Like, right. Like, I also want to promote, like, there are some really great case uses in this, like, right. Like, just like any kind of new technology, there's some really great case uses and really ways that this can enhance. Like, and studies actually show that if you use AI in the correct way to augment your work, to work with this, use it as a tool, you can do better work. And I think we all want to do better work. We all want to produce better things, right? Like, that's what got me into writing letters of recommendation using AI, is I wanted to do better for my students. And so I looked into those opportunities, and I can say that it totally has helped me think deeper on things. And I also say, as an educator, it's up to me to model good behavior, right? Like, again, AI is here, and I'd much rather my students learn how to work with AI and develop good habits than develop, and then the converse on the bad, on the last bullet point is, or the second to last bullet point is, learn bad habits, on their own, and then me having to have them unlearn those bad habits and then teach them good habits. Like, I'd rather them develop good habits from the get-go so that they can use this technology for good to augment their thinking and to really promote self-reflection. And then also, just AI is just going to be, reality of the world is going to be something that they're going to be expected to know how to use in the workforce. And so, like, I really want to set this thing. I've kind of alluded to it. Um, you know, there's really two ways to approach AI, all right, and tasks. And so, if you read a lot of business articles, you're going to see a lot of things talk about automation, right? Having AI do the work for you. And there's some really great case uses for AI doing work for you. Like, there's some tedious tasks, some data entry things, maybe writing some emails, like, really simple emails and making sure you get the tone right. Like, there's some really great case uses for automation. Unfortunately, there aren't that many great case uses for automation in the college counseling process. Like, right, we do not want AI doing the work for our students. This is what everybody's freaking out about, is that, students are going to use AI to do all the work for them and they're going to get lazy. And I want to say that I do not foresee that future happening. My conversations with students want to do the right thing. They want to do this right. They want to learn for the most part. Um, and instead, like, there are plenty of good case uses to use AI as a tool, as something that works along beside you, where you can, use AI alongside the learning process, the reflection process, have it ask you questions, have you, do some deep reflection and produce some work for you, but then you augmenting that work. And so we'll go through a few cases of that. But before we do, I did tell you I was going to teach you how to prompt. And so I'm going to give you a very brief crash course in how to prompt. And this is what really, I was extremely AI skeptic in the beginning. I used it to write emails, but then what happened with me is I took this prompting class and it really changed the way I saw AI. So I don't want you to necessarily pay $400 to do a prompting class. It's not worth that. It's not worth the time that I put into it. I'm going to give you the pieces that you need to know. So I was introduced to this master method that was developed by Rachel Woods at the AI Exchange. And so um, it helped me really reflect on my core values and finding ways that AI could add to those core values. And so I think it's a really great way to prompt effectively. I have been able to get really good outputs from AI. And actually, quite scarily, like, I'm doing less and less editing on outputs than I used to on sometimes, which is nice. But I mean, I'm still doing a lot of edits and still requires lots of critical thought. It's still work intensive, but still quicker than the pre-AI version of doing this work. And you can even make the case that it's probably might even be better quality. So MASTER is an acronym. It stands for, the M stands for Markdown, which, if you are a technical person, Markdown is a fancy way. If you're a coder, it's a fancy way for just say organization. So you want to prompt that is organized. So something that is longer. I usually have, like, titles and, on my prompts, and like making sure that it's very organized. Like, you want related ideas together. You don't want to just like throw stuff in there. AI, if you have a disorganized prompt, you're gonna get a disorganized output. I always have especially for my longer prompts, I always have AI act as something. AI has, it has access to a ridiculous amount of data that we could not wrap our heads around. And so what acting as does is it helps kind of push the AI into a particular like realm of data. So instead of looking at the entire data set, it'll kind of go to, so you're like act as a college counselor at independent school. It will go to the data it has about college counseling at independent schools. And trust me, it's got a lot of it. Um, and kind of points it in the right direction. Specify. So this is where you're going to put in the instructions, right? This is where you're going to really tell the AI what you want and be very clear, organized, detailed instructions, right? I want you to treat this AI as the smartest kindergartner you've ever met, right? Like it's a kindergarten has access to all the knowledge in the human world, but it doesn't really understand the context of what to do with that information. And so you, as the prompter, are really gonna, especially for more complicated things, really gonna have to give it detailed instructions and work through that. The T in thread is really just good practice of one topic per thread, right? I think most people do this now, but in case you don't, like, I don't want you to treat ChatGPT as like one giant ongoing conversation. Like if you were talking about something different, it should get its own window or its own new prompt, own new beginning, even if you're doing the same task. Like so every time I'm writing a letter of recommendation using AI, I am having a new window because if you AI saves all that data, and if you have it in the same window and that same chat, it's going to get confused and it's going to confuse topics and things. So one query, one thread. Examples. So this is the context. This is what um, so in my letters of recommendation, this would be the information about the student that would be pertinent and that I would like included in there. This would also be maybe ideas of like examples of what a good output looks like or what bad output looks like or what an average output looks like. So providing lots of context. And then regenerate and test. And so this is, you're most likely not going to get the thing you're looking for in the first try, but based on the output, the beautiful thing about AI is you can just ask it to do it again and kind of really debug it and test again and again. So, and also I would also say for regenerate and test, this is also part of the editing process, right? Like, no one's just going to take what AI gives you and then just put it in there. Like we want you to edit things, cut things, reword things, and things like that. Yeah. So I want to, use that, give you this example. So if you example and go to this QR code, you see some of my work in progress. So this is the prompt I used for this one-time student, the class of 2023. So this would have been the fall of 2022 of a student that was really struggling writing an essay. And this was right when AI was, pretty much on the newer end for us. Thinking back to that. So yeah, just the background on this exercise is I've only used this one time. I haven't had to use it since, but I got it ready to go in case I need to. So yeah, class of 2023. And so on October 15th, she was struggling. Had no Common App essay, had no idea where to go. Like she just was really lost. And I tried lots of really in-person exercises. They were really going nowhere. It's like, okay, we need something here. She had some November 1 deadlines. I'm like, we need to produce something. And so, we did do some exercises. So we saved those exercises. So college essay guys, values exercise together. And we had AI come up with a model for her to see, right? Like, so we plugged in what she did with the values exercise in the AI, and it gave her a draft essay. And she had a story she wanted to write about too. So it gave her like a draft story. And so I read that story and we both agreed that that was comically terrible, and not even remotely what she would even write about. But like it gave her an example and it like what it helped for her is it helped model that essay for her. Like she then felt like she had a roadmap to actually work with and an idea of how to structure it. And I asked questions and had her go deeper. And then she just wrote the final product on her own with her own voice. Like she didn't use AI for the remainder of this project. Like, but what it did is it produced like a personal, like it produced an example that was close enough for her where she knew where to go on and actually created a really good essay after that. I mean, it wasn't one of those that would be featured in New York Times, but it was something that we were both proud of. And it was really great to see her growth there. So I'm going to just kind of take you over like, really quickly on how I did this because it is a bigger prompt. And so, here having, if you go into the document I showed you, you'll notice that you do not see a student. That's not a student's that's not that student's essay. It's actually something I did on my own to recreate my own essay from when I applied to college about failing my driver's test. Again, not one that would be featured in the New York Times, nothing groundbreaking, but I think it works. And it worked for me. So, like, but just in this role, like, you're a high school senior born and raised in Hawaii, giving you an example of like what an act as piece looks like. Here's here are the instructions. And so all those pieces in blue are the pieces that are about instructions, right? And so we kind of, I wanted to keep that essay short. Like I didn't want it to write the whole thing for her. So I was like, hey, 550 words instead of the 650, things like that. And then giving it instructions on, how we can, what this prompt can do to help us get and give us the and giving us good examples and something to work off of. And then here is the context that I wrote about, like, parts of, so you'll see parts of the story that I wanted to talk, the general story that I wanted to talk about, and then really talking about the values that I wanted, highlighted in this essay. And then as you go through that document, if you actually look into what ChatGPT produced for me, you'll see that first draft of this college essay that or that draft that AI came up with. And so I had to work with, and I read it and I edited it like I normally would with a college essay. I asked questions to kind of get, well, me to think deeper, and then rewrote something at the end. And that second essay is the final product of this entire exercise, right? And so this was something I've done one time. It was really intense. Like I do not want to do this for every student. Like this took a lot of work. I had to teach a student how to prompt. I had to sit there with the essay and kind of keep a track of what that essay was so she didn't submit an AI essay. And it was a lot of work. And I'm glad I haven't had to do this again, but I'm ready to deploy this if I need to ever again. So fingers crossed there. Another activity I do, this one's a lot shorter, Michelle, I promise. And so like when it comes to college search suggestions, on this one doesn't have a big, like this is the prompt, this is the entire prompt right here, right? So not everything has to be a big, giant, complicated prompt. So when we're talking, I meet with my juniors and I'm suggesting colleges to them that, they do a really great job of finding really selective institutions on their own. And I usually am the one who's suggesting a lot more likelier schools. And so I suggest colleges to them. I have students fill out a survey. We go through the survey together. I ask them maybe some more probing questions. And so I give them their, suggestions the old-fashioned way, like, off the top of my head and like give them to think, okay, here's some suggestions for you. And then I go into AI and then I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, let's think about AI together. Let's see. I don't make sure that we don't leave any rock unturned here. And so I kind of give them this prompt and I don't save this one. I type this one live for them, teaching them how to prompt, giving them like, hey, these are some good elements of a prompt. Put their school survey in there and then give me some likely options, X percent MIT rates. This is a really fantastic student. So, you can edit that if you'd like, and then give us some suggestions. And then I see the output with them, and it does give me some overlap of schools that I've already suggested. And like the students are like, oh, wow, they get really impressed. Oh, you know what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Thank you. But also then it gives me like a few suggestions that I didn't. And for some, I'm like, well, this is great. And so we go to the website, we look together, we go to the website, make sure that they actually do have what the student wants. And I'm like, yeah, you know what, this is a really good one. Or sometimes I'm like, ooh, no, 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 no. This one, I think I know what the AI is trying to get at here, but then we talk about it and it's like, yeah, no, this one's not great either. And I think there's a really good exercise with students too, because it kind of teaches them how to prompt, how to act AI, but also how to discern the source, right? And kind of fact check what AI gives them, right? So those are two activities I have. When it comes to me, the ground rules that I have with AI, and this is what guides me everywhere, is like, if you wouldn't post it anonymously on Reddit, don't put it in a ChatGPT or any other AI, right? So if I don't want that, if I didn't want my prompts getting all over the internet, I'm not going to put that in there. So that's why I don't put any sensitive information in there. I even take it a step further. Like my students' names don't go in there. My school's name doesn't go in there. I just keep, definitely no medical information, sensitive information definitely doesn't not go in there. So creating aliases. And it's like, if my AI use became headline news, could I justify it to people inquiring, right? And so everything I'm doing, like, right, like I feel like, yeah, I'm not putting it out there. I'm not calling up the New York Times and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. But if it did get out there, like I feel like I can justify everything that I do with AI. So just a few ground rules to work with and said a lot. So, but I want you all to hear from the great Michelle because she's got some really great tidbits over here to tell you
Thank
all about.
you. Um, One of the things that, I mean, Scott told you that he added a few little slides and he has his little secret, which I didn't know about,
Mhm.
but I also have a little secret that I'll share with
Mhm.
everybody, including Scott for the first time. Um, I find AI kind of scary. It scares me because of how much I've seen it grow and expand and get better since Scott and I first had this conversation. And Scott was definitely an early adopter, and he taught me, the foundation of all the tricks that I know. And in that time, just a few short years, it's gotten a lot better, more accurate, not fully accurate, more in many ways. Still need to, fact check. Faster, more, it can handle more complex questions prompting. So it scares me. And I get very existential when I think about this because, as we all can agree, like we are worried about critical thinking skills, intellectual depth. We want to teach our students how to utilize that because the truth be told is that if they can learn how to use AI tools and really power up on their humanity and exercise their humanity and do it in conjunction with AI, they're going to be rock stars in whatever profession they decide to pursue. Um, okay, so the ethics of it, so important. And when everything started to happen a couple of years ago, my very first question that I initially went to, it's the good Catholic girl in me. I think my upbringing was like, am I going to get in trouble if I start playing around with this at school? Like, I don't want to get in trouble. And so I immediately went to our leadership team and was like, hey, have you guys heard about this AI thing and, like ChatGPT? And I just coincidentally, luckily, work at an institution where the Department of Computer Science plus our information technology director, they had already started collaborating on pulling together a leadership team to come up with Roland Hall's policy because they, as leaders and, definite, this is their profession, they were at the forefront of this and saw it coming before we probably the rest of us all did. And so they were on this before I had even asked the question, and we're so pleased to be able to show me this. And so here, if any of you, if you haven't asked your school leadership team, might want to ask, but if you are in the process of thinking about a school policy or it's being revisited, here's what we came up with. And in bold, this is the part that really spoke to my heart was that we're committed to helping students understand that while these tools are not always effective in fostering the development of their own knowledge, using AI ethically, safely, and skillfully will prepare our students to tackle tough questions and problems in school and beyond. And so I revisit this often, and if it would be helpful to all of you, when you get access to these slides, you can see at the very bottom there's a link because there's more to it. But this is where we started. And so I was pretty much given, a green light to start helping students. And one of the very initial scary things that I could see students doing was basically leaning into the automation piece of this. And honestly, there were some really fantastic conversations because the students were like, that's not, of course, there were some that were like, woohoo, yes, like the easy button. We just got the biggest easy button in the world. But some were having their own little existential meltdowns about this. And so, especially as it was relating to the college application process, I was like, I want to be able to help students identify ways to use this that asks questions. So, I started asking ChatGPT to help teach me how to prompt it in a way that didn't generate answers, but generated questions back to the students that deepen, I explicitly said, deepen reflection and critical thinking. And so I'm going to walk you through what chat taught me how to do. And so is a prompt that we started using and I'm fortunate to have a college planning class where I have all the students I work with in front of me for 45 minutes a week. And so personal essay prompting. The student will paste a detailed, personal, rough draft into AI. Again, not so personal that, again, we teach them about those safeguards about their personal information. So if it's anything that they are not comfortable spreading to the world, they shouldn't be putting it in. But for the personal essay, you know the types of stories we're talking about that they were rough drafting on. And here's the reverse prompt. Instead of editing this college essay, ask me 5 questions that will show me more of who I am. And these are actual examples of what AI came back to the students with. What specific moment made this experience or accomplishment meaningful to you? How did this challenge change how you see yourself? Who influenced you most in the story? And you can see how those simple little prompts really get the students thinking, drafting, and brainstorming in a more personal, insightful, thoughtful, and reflective way, which we all know elevates an essay. So, next one, activities list. How many of us have seen those first drafts where my favorite one that I always use is a student who works at a local resort, and she was in housekeeping there. And her example description was, I clean toilets and rooms and basically everything. I was like, no, you cannot put that on your resume or in your activities section. So input a list of activities with short brainstorm descriptions. And I even teach them how to go into the Common App, click the preview button at the top of that, activity section, and it generates that PDF. Copy, paste, or copy one, paste. And then here's the prompt. Here's my activities list or resume. Please ask me clarifying questions so that I can make each activity description more specific. What leadership role did you take in this club? How many of us have read them where they don't actually talk about the leadership skills or roles that they had? They underreport and they undersell all the time. Reverse prompting will help them kind of mitigate some of that underreporting and underselling. Can you give an example of how you demonstrated communication or collaboration during a game or a season? Amplifying those really boring athlete descriptions just a little bit. What skills did you develop from this activity? This elevates. So I've really liked it for expanding the descriptions for activity lists. Next one is about supplements. So share an essay prompt, why this college, and a detailed, well-searched rough draft. So if you notice from Scott's mega prompt, one of the things that I first learned, and it was from Scott, was the more detailed, specific information you give AI to work with, you train that little AI kindergartner that knows everything about everything, and you get them to really focus and think about an essay about why Boulder, why, McAllister. And the student has to do their homework and has to do the initial research. And we teach them how to do that. And what does it look like? They know what it looks like from an academic paper. And I teach them, I connect those dots. It's actually not that different. You are looking for textual evidence. Now, you might actually be turning to the webpage for that or the department webpage, teaching them how to use a webpage as a resource and a tool. So when they're pasting in, it's detailed, it's personal, it's well-researched, and it's definitely a rough draft. Instead of drafting, ask me 10 questions that will help me find personal and specific content for this prompt. Which professors or classes excite you most and why? How do your current interests connect to the school's opportunities? Internships, clubs, organizations, partnerships locally within the town or the city. Those are the types of opportunities we want to get in there. And what communities do you hope to join on campus and why? It elevates the quality, the depth, and the connection that a student can establish between an institution and what they have to offer and what they want. So next example is counselor feedback integration. It probably doesn't surprise you guys that I am using ChatGPT a lot to make me a better counselor when it comes to giving students feedback. How many of us, especially in the month of October, which I affectionately refer to as Sucktober, how many of us are sitting there and I'm like, I know I don't like this paragraph. I know it's not doing what I want it to do. I can tell kind of what the student is trying to do. I need help. I have to tell you, I have been amazed at the constructive feedback. Please provide constructive feedback on this paragraph for this prompt at this school. There are nuggets of gold in there that I incorporate into my feedback that then I own, I choose, I edit, and I'm putting in comments and suggestions into Google Doc. I'm not actually typing for the student. And so the student ultimately ends up with a Google Doc of my comments and suggestions on that column. They can download that as a Word document, save it as a PDF, and see my comments over there. They can upload it into chat and say, based on the feedback in this college essay, ask me reflection questions that could help me revise it more deeply. And here you can see some of those questions, sample AI questions. And it has elevated the quality of their revision work. So next one, let's go. Reverse prompting for common topics. Okay, this is a total pet peeve of mine, and I think that anybody that's been, in this work for more than one cycle and has seen those common essay topics, sports, service, travel, and at my high school we have this really competitive, prestigious, nationally renowned debate program. And the number of really cliche, common, and predictable essays I see about debate, it's like mind numbing. It makes me just want to like smash my head into a wall. So I was like, I bet my assistant chat can help me with this. So reverse prompting for common topics. Instead of suggesting essay revisions, ask me 10 questions that will help me write about my sports experience in a way that is uncommon, unpredictable, not cliche, and personal. Sports team. What did you learn from moments when you sat on the bench or lost rather than when you won? Basic flip. Flip that script, and all of a sudden it's a totally different essay and potentially more interesting. How did your relationship with the teammate or coach shape you off the field? Not on the field, off the field. What unexpected skills, organization, conflict resolution, leadership style did you develop? That conflict resolution one. When the kids, when they're on the team and they are wrestling with that, these are my friends, but now I'm in a leadership position as a captain, and how do I that was an idea that chat, because I didn't think of that on my own. And so elevating, maybe some of you are really creative thinkers around some of these common topics. I didn't have the juice to do that. So it was helping me guide them in a way that was more interesting, more deep thinking. What rituals, routines, or behind the scene details shape your experience? It's very different to read that essay than it is the state championship or the leadership skills that I learned. Another common topic that travel, especially when it's connected to service. Oh boy. So here are some of the AI ones. What small everyday details, food, conversations, routines stayed with you more than famous landmarks? How did you handle being uncomfortable or out of place? Yes. Did you ever notice a connection between your home culture and what you saw abroad? Who was a person you met while traveling who changed how you think, even in a small way? These are much more interesting essays than the typical travel and travel service essays. So, next one is about my debate team, my beloved debate team students. How did losing an argument teach you more than winning one? When did debate change how you listen, not just how you argue? What has debate taught you about handling conflict in your personal life? And how has debate shaped the way you think about leadership, humility, or compromise? One of the things that came up during the Q&A when we were presenting live at NACAC was, well, if we all start doing this and asking for uncommon, unpredictable, approaches or approaches that aren't cliche, then won't they all become then cliche and predictable? And Scott, I can't remember your answer other than no, but there's part of the actual AI technology that Scott was able to comment on. Do you want to jump in on that? Because I just thought it was a really perceptive question.
Yeah, so there's two elements, right? So there is a bit of randomness that goes in the chat GPT. Like, so I don't want to get too technical with how AI works. I mean, there's probably some of you, who are really into that, but I also know there's some of you that are really not into that. But there's a degree of randomness, right? So you can type in a prompt to AI, and theoretically, you should never get the same. Like, if you just type in the same thing 500 times, you should get 500 different responses. They will be similar enough where, like, they will average out to be saying overly the same thing, but there will be some nuance there, and there will be some nuanced differences every time you put in things. But the second thing is too, though, is like, so I think when, you have someone like Michelle, or, having students ask these kind of questions. And I like to tell students, like, I always have those students all the time who come in like, oh, I can't write about this because it's about sports. I can't write about this because it's about travel. I can't write about this because it's about this. And I'm like, you can write about anything. Now, I know where you're getting that idea from. Like, there's so many essays like that and it can sound cliche, but what's going to make this story beautiful? Like, your idea, your goal here is not to write a new story, right? Like, even Shakespeare ripped off Greek tragedies and things like that. Like, you're not going to recreate a totally unique story in itself. What's going to make what makes you beautiful, what makes you unique are the details of things. Like, yeah, are you the first person that's ever won a state championship? No. But are you the only person that's won a state championship the way you have? Yes. Right? Like, it's those details about you that are going to really pop out and tell us about you. Are you the first person that's had, divorced parents? Of course not. Like, right? But like, it's that, but no one's experienced it the way you have. And no one ever will experience it the way you have. And so, what I love about what Michelle's doing is like having these students, asking these questions to have them think deeper and getting those details out. And once, because I think those essays take on a totally different form once they start incorporating those details.
Yeah. And one of the things that on the next slide that I really emphasize with the students is I don't want them just to think about their answers to these questions. Like, they can look at the questions and then, if they're being a little bit lazy, they might just think about it, but I really want them to write. And so I really want them connecting and exercising their humanity with this. And so, yes, you're sitting here looking at these questions, but then now I want you to journal. I want you to answer. I want you to free write. I want you just to like get into that and take those notes and let the brain, exercise and do what it does best by, you're thinking, you're creating, you're iterating, and taking on that role, I think is so, so important to model and to teach the students to do. And again, it's a question generator that nudges students away from predictable and common storylines into something that's specific, reflective, and has their own unique details. And so those are some of the things that are new that I was implementing this year in this kind of application, in this application cycle. I'll give you a little insight into what I'm thinking about for like my evolution and my growth in this is I started playing around with custom GPT and taking what I learned from Scott's really, really detailed prompting. I created a custom GPT. Stay tuned. Maybe there will be a future presentation on how to train your custom bot to help me write letters of recommendation in the way that I really love to highlight personal examples and anecdotes and the distinctive character traits that students are bringing with them. And so I'm also going to start playing around in the spring with creating a custom GPT for um, essay writing and feedback, and teaching that custom GPT again, not to rewrite, not to revise, but to generate deeper, thoughtful questions to have the students exercising their critical thinking and really, promoting some intellectual depth in that. And so that's where I'm headed next. Stay tuned, everybody. But every single time that Scott and I have either presented together or individually at, various conferences, we always get asked, and I appreciate the question about the environmental impact. My hometown here, Salt Lake City, Utah, and where Scott lives now, we've been hit very hard and tragically by climate change. And so environmental impact is something so important to me. And so Scott and I did a little research. I'm going to let him close it out here, and then we'll have time for Q&A.
Thank you, Michelle. So yeah, so when it comes to AI energy, like I want to emphasize that there is a major concern here. Right? I want to point that out, and we all should really be worried. We all should really be lobbying our government for better regulations on these AI companies. But I want to give you a sense of what that looks like, because I think if you've been relying solely on what you hear in the news and on social media, a lot of you are probably like, oh, well, I'm not going to let my students use it, or I'm not going to use it because of this environmental impact. And I don't, I understand where you're coming from. I really do. And if you are there, or if you know a colleague that is there, and that's how they feel, I would really hope that you can have a discussion with them to at least encourage them to maybe have maybe explore a little bit more with AI, because it is a little bit more complicated than you personally using ChatGPT and affecting the environment. I want you to know that when it comes to energy consumption, there are really two processes that are here that are somewhat related, but they are separate enough to really talk about. And so that's first building the model. So like when OpenAI has to build ChatGPT 5, they have to go through this whole entire process. Of building the model and training the model and doing something that's called inference, and to really kind of help it work and function. This is how they make their money. This is how they build the model. And I will tell you that that part of the building process is extremely energy and water intense. You need a massive amount of energy. You need to build these massive data centers that take up a lot of space. You need a ton of chips. And so all the logistics of actually building these centers, getting the materials for these chips is very energy intense. Running these centers and the amount of electricity used to just run this and train this is massively intense. Um, there are estimates that building ChatGPT 4 or building ChatGPT 3. So this was two models ago, took, used enough power just to build it to power the entire city of San Francisco for 3 days. And that doesn't include the water that's used to cool these things, because as we know, anytime you're using electricity, it causes heat, and we don't want these things overheating. So a lot of water is run through to cool these systems down. And I want you to know that building this model, so like when you're reading that AI is using a ton of energy, I want you to know that 80 to 90, it's still really relatively unknown, but like we estimate that roughly 80 to 90+% of that energy that is there is just to build the model, just to come up with that inference part of the model aspect, right? Um, and and so I think if people, but here's the thing, right? Like if all this energy was, gotten from solar panels and wind turbines and clean energy, no one would care about this. But it's not, unfortunately. Like we're using some of the dirtiest fuel to run these centers, right? We're using lots of gasoline, natural gas, sometimes even coal to produce a lot of the energy that's being there. And the construction maintenance produces toxic stuff for local communities. And, there are several news stories out there highlighting those aspects. And so I think if you want to turn your advocacy somewhere, like I would turn it here in terms of, let's like, do we really need a new model every couple of months, right? Because this is the energy intensive process. Do these AI companies really need to come out with new models all the time? Can we come up with regulations on what kind of energy is used, kind of things there? And so talking to lawmakers, talking to policymakers, talking to organizations about reforming this process. Because right now, I'm going to be honest with you, it is the Wild West. You can do whatever you want. These AI companies can do whatever they want, pretty much. And they're getting subsidies on your tax dollars too. Just putting that out there, right? So there are a lot of really good reforms, I think, energy used here, right? But I think I don't want to discourage people from not using these, personally, right? Because, once it's built, like that energy has already been used, right? And so I will say your personal energy use it still uses energy, right? Like, it's not free, but it pales into comparison the energy used to build a model. And I say for now, because the way we use AI will evolve in the future, theoretically. Is kind of why I hope it doesn't advance anymore because like the way we use it now is actually like you'll see, give you context of how much does your personal use take up. Now, again, we're assuming that one ChatGPT query, so you typing in ChatGPT one times and take 3 millionths of a kilowatt hour or 3/10,000ths of a kilowatt hour. We're going to assume that a ChatGPT query is going to take, zero point zero 0.02 cups of water to use and cool the data centers. But these are rough estimates. I mean, depending on what you're doing, there's going to be some variance there and how much energy is being used. Like, yeah, if you're making a movie in ChatGPT, that's going to take a whole lot more energy than a text-based response. But if you're, for the most part, what most people are doing, their text-based responses, if you watch K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix, right, you would have to go ask ChatGPT 600 different things to make up for the energy used or to equate the energy used watching K-pop Demon Hunters, right? If you use a toilet like I do, we use this daily. One single flush is 800 queries in ChatGPT in terms of water use. Lighting your office is a lot of energy too, lots of ChatGPT queries. And then, yeah, but this, me flying to Columbus used a whole lot more energy. And I'd have to type in a lot of, into ChatGPT. But also thinking though, too, like this stuff scales, right? Like 3.3 billion queries. Yeah, that's a lot of queries, but, we estimate that that's probably 3 days worth of queries worldwide, right? So like every day, ChatGPT pretty much or every 3 days, ChatGPT is using energy that would be used for some one flight to go from Honolulu to Columbus. So just things to think about. So like again, I'm you personally using it is not totally putting too much emphasis on our power grid and over demanding our power grid. There is a process that is doing that for sure and ways and I advocate for that. But again, we also can be responsible with our AI use too. Like I limit the frivolous activities I do with AI, even though I know that relatively it's low. But like, hey, as if everybody on the planet was, getting a chat, asking chat to create a cute cat poster every day, that would consume a ton of energy, right? And so I'm a little bit mindful of what I want to do, and I, save it for tasks that I find productive that help my students, help me do my work better.
Yeah. I've decided I'm not going to have it generate pictures of my 1-year-old yellow lab, right? Because I'd much rather use it to revise, help me suggest feedback to a student's essay. So that personal use, I think is important. And Scott, if you go to the very last slide, people will be able to, not that one, then yeah, this one. If you want access to the slide deck and you have your iPhone there, you can scan this code to get access to the deck. And this is where we're going to turn it on over to all of you to ask questions. I only shared the one question from our live session that I just thought was really interesting about, if we all were asking for uncommon, unpredictable, questions, would it all become predictable and common and cliche? And so what about questions that you guys have?
Yeah. Awesome. That was so great. And I will be honest, I didn't have a chance to see this session at NACAC. So this was really, really great. And I learned a lot myself. And so yeah, there are some good questions here. I did go ahead, I shared the link to the Roland Hall AI policy. I think there are people here that are going to be really interested in seeing that. I will say I was really excited to see that, Michelle, because I have about 20 university policies is, and these are not the university campus-wide AI policies, but these are actually policies that are specific to college admissions. So the admission office is coming out, with policies on how students should or shouldn't use AI in that process. We've put all them together in the second link I just put. We put a Padlet together, and you can find those. But this is actually the first time I've seen, and I know you're not the only high school with this, but this is the first time I've seen a policy at the high school level and heard of a counseling office that's also saying, we are using that policy. I've actually talked to counselors who are at high schools where the high school wide policy is banning AI, and that is their policy. There is no AI permitted. And then you have this counseling office that's trying to navigate what do they do, and they have developed a separate policy because they say, it's not, students need to learn how to use this technology, and they are using it. And if we're telling them just not to use it, the effect is they're using it and not telling us how they're using it. And that's a really dangerous, space to be in. So, I'm curious, Scott, what's your school? How's your school navigating this? Is there a campus-wide policy? Does your office have policy that you refer to when students ask about that?
So our policy, for a while, our official policy is let's just see what happens, which I was adamantly against. But we worked with it. But what we did is it's not like a separate AI policy necessarily, but like in our classrooms we have like these AI levels. All right, there's like 5 different levels of like AI use. And so like, in a perfect world, our teachers would say, this is in a level 1 assignment, which means that there's no AI permitted on this assignment, just to give like, students expectation that for this assignment, you can't use AI, all the way up to like level 5, where it's like, you can do whatever you want with AI. And then there's everything in between, right? Of like, what's permitted, what's not. So to give clear messages there. But what we have done new for this year, and I was part of this, is we really just updated we saw that this was pretty much an academic honesty issue. And so we pretty much revamped our academic honesty part of our, handbook to really incorporate, and really be a lot more specific about AI, and like, kind of highlighting a lot of like what Roland Hall does of like, AI should be a collaborator, not replacing the work that you do, and that, and then, really using the same language that we've always have done for academic honesty, in that AI specific case. But yeah, just being more elaborate on what good AI use looks like, and, what plagiarism looks like in the AI world.
Mhm. Yes, and if there are any attendees and you are at a school that has a policy, AICA would love to see it. Please, like, send it to me in LinkedIn or post it even on our LinkedIn. We would love to see more of those kind of high school specific AI policies. I will tell you that I feel at the university level, the universities are not doing, leading the way as they should in this. Some schools have put out great policies that are very helpful, and others, even the Common App, they have such a vague and unhelpful policy that's deeply buried in a page of their fraud, avoiding fraud. I recently wrote about this on my Substack because some universities are also then adopting that Common App policy as their own, such as Yale. So Yale says, okay, Common App has a policy, and here it is, and that's what our policy is going to be as well. So I've done a lot of talking about this. I hope it leaves you guys in a really rough place, I think, because here you are, you're the ones having the conversations with students. They're the ones, right in front of you, and you're looking to universities saying, well, what do you want? What do you expect from these students who are applying to your schools? And either you're getting no guidance from the vast majority, or sometimes you're getting not helpful guidance. I will call out BYU right now, but their guidance is just absolute ban on any kind of artificial intelligence. And as we all know, if you open your Google, doc, you are using artificial intelligence. So essentially, to apply to BYU, you need a paper and a pencil these days and send it in, by mail. Yeah, and there's a lot of but there are good policies. That one I will say is on the extreme of not being great. I have a question that came in here about authenticity, and this gets asked. I hear this word so much, and this huge concern, especially I find with people that, aren't that familiar with this technology. The first thought or the first feeling when it comes to the college essay is if you use AI in anyway, the essay is not going to be authentic. And what the problem is, I mean, here I am, and I've been in college admissions for decades. When I hear that, I go, what do you mean by authentic? You know, and I just like, I have my own opinion about that. And I kind of, I feel like I think I know what that is. But I would love to hear from both of you who are having these conversations with a student to make sure that final product actually reflects who they are. What does it mean, when somebody says, that essay needs to be authentic, and how do you make sure that it is authentic when they're using this kind of technology?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Emily. And so I think for me, all right, and when there's actually an AI guide in college counseling that came out today, right? I saw it today on some Substack. I think it was Brendan Barnard's. And there's some like really great tips in there. I was like, oh yeah, this is fantastic. But like one thing said like, while AI should never write a college essay draft for you. And I don't really think I agree with that advice either. I think like, we all kind of like, we all get in this like black and white mode when it comes to AI. It's like good, bad, good, bad. And I think like what matters most is it's not like, are you using AI or not? I think it's like, how are you using AI in this process? I think is really the important aspect here, right? Like I think if you just say write me a college essay about me learning how to surf and the things I learned from that, and then ChatGPT will literally just write it, you cut and paste that and put it in a document, it's going to be terrible. Like Cornell produced a study that I think everybody knew about, knew the results before the results were put out, but they put out a study that said like, yeah, when ChatGPT just writes an essay for you, it's terrible. And it's like, yes, anybody could have told you. But if going back to my student, like, right, like we had it produce a draft. Neither of us liked it, right? But we put in work, we asked questions, we dug deeper, and Michelle did a much more efficient way of doing this, of just having AI ask the questions for you, doing that deep dive, and doing that self-reflection, encouraging that self-reflection. I mean, look, I would love to do that with all 50 of my students, right? Like I'd love to sit down and ask them a ton of questions, but the reality is, I can't be there all the time for all 50 of my students. When my students are thinking about this again, I wish they wouldn't think about this at 11:30 at night or 2 in the morning, but reality is that they are. I'm not there at 11:30. I'm not there at 2 in the morning, and I never will be. So like having a tool that can at least ask them questions and giving them equipped to ask questions, and I think what they're doing with it, like, are they still doing the thinking? And there's a way to augment this where a student can still do the thinking. They still can produce things. And AI can be a partner where it's asking you questions. Maybe having you, just rephrase a sentence too, I think is also a great way. Because like, going back to Michelle's point of like, where she was like, yeah, I read this paragraph and I just don't like it. And I'm like, yeah, like I get that too. Like, I'm like, all I can say right now is this paragraph is terrible. And I don't want to say that to a student, right? Like, so like having AI, like, just kind of just give me ideas of what I should be saying is really helpful. So I think like with that authenticity, like, yeah, we want students to still engage with that self-reflection aspect. That's really important for me. It's what drives me in this work. It's why I keep, why I still do this work is to do this self-reflection. And so encouraging our students to still want to do that. And I will tell you, the good news is that our students do want to do that work, for the most part. Like they, that example of like, I don't think there is a student out there that's just using it to create an essay for them. Like I have not found that student. I mean, maybe that student does exist, but like I haven't found that student, and it's not really rewarding for them. But like I think, using this as a thought partner, ask questions, and use it as an aid to do deeper self-reflection, I think will definitely help with that authenticity.
And
Yeah.
I just add
Sorry, go
that with authenticity, I think of it, and it goes to Emily's initial question, like, well, what is your definition of authenticity? Because when I think of authenticity, is it real? Is
Mhm.
it personal? Is it your experience? Is it your reflection?
Yeah.
Those are elements of authenticity. And I can tell you that the essays that, at least the ones that the students are sharing with me, um, there are all those elements. I go through that checklist in my mind. And that to me is authenticity and augmented, supported by some AI reflection. I think it's actually more authentic than it was going to be.
ahead.
So, there is a question really quickly, Emily. I don't know if you wanted to get to this about, how do Scott and I navigate the fact that with students applying to colleges, broadly, widely, all over the place, in different AI policies, admissions policies, like how are we navigating that?
Yes, yes. I do want to just remind people there's two more sessions that we are going to have similar to this. We have one on November 13th and December 9th. Edhub.ai is where you're going to find that information and sign up for them there. We do hope that you will join us. But we will, yeah, we're going to stay on and answer this question here, but just wanted to make sure people are aware. This is the first in a three-part series that we're doing. So please join us for the other ones. I'm going to stop sharing here. Would you mind, Scott, also stop sharing your screen and then we'll answer this question that came in. Michelle, do you want to start? Take that question?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you honestly that it's tricky, and I kind of think about it this way. I can't possibly know all of the AI policies. I also can't possibly know all of the testing policies. And I can't know all of the policies about we want official test scores versus self-reported test scores. And so I do make the students own their participation in this as well. And, Emily brought up the example of BYU, which is in my backyard. And I do have students that apply to BYU every year. And so I use this as an example. You have to do your homework and you have to know the policies at the schools that you're applying to. So if they require official test scores from ACT and College Board, you need to know that. I'm not going to be the one to tell you that. And if you're applying to BYU, you better not be using any AI, at Emily's point, it's a little naive that they wrote the statement the way they did because AI is literally embedded everywhere. But nevertheless, I honestly, I put that on the students, and it might sound like a cop out to some people. But how are we supposed to know all the policies everywhere? We can't. Why even pretend? Why set us up for that? So that's my take.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I tell my students that there are policies out there, like so there are schools out there, and I tell them to do their own research, and I tell them to, with that information, act accordingly, act ethically. That's what I tell them. I'm going to tell you the part that I wish I could tell them, and act, but the part that this is more addressed to the colleges that I think to colleges in general, and I think there's varying degrees of this. I want colleges to understand that there are great ways, like going back to this, if this became headline news, like if it became headline news that I was using AI to help students with college essay work and that got out there, I could totally justify this. Like, and I think anybody, I've talked to college counselors, I've talked to college admissions people, and they're like, wow, this is a real, like, I never knew that you could do something like that. Wow, that's a really great exercise. Wow, that's pretty much exactly what we want you to be doing with students. Like when I tell them how I'm using it with the students, how I've been working with them, and kind of thinking through those things and like it kind of how it supplements and augments the work and really supplements the critical thinking that we want our self-reflection that we want our students to do. I also want colleges to understand though that this is incredibly unpredictable, undetectable. Like I do not understand how a college today, and I don't tell my students this, I do not, but I want colleges to understand that these colleges that are just saying ban like Brown, like you cannot detect this. If you use these AI trackers, they are terrible. What they are really good at is detecting who are your English as a second language speaker. They're really good at identifying English as second language speakers. They're not really, I mean, Michelle was telling me about how she put a rec letter from like 2018 into an AI tracker and it said it was like 98% AI written. I was like, well, it couldn't have been because it didn't exist then, right? And there's so many countless examples of that. Even if we wanted to take these at face value, there's so many ways that their students could cheat through those systems. So what I would say is like, but we all want our students to think critically. Again, I want you to know. So like, I would, and really urge colleges to really help us out, help us college counselors get out and really help us support our students through this, realizing that AI is there, giving us all resources on how we can support our students. In terms of what you can give students, like I think Swarthmore's thing is great, but I think one thing colleges are extremely short on right now is actually giving guidance, like what I really and what we encourage our teachers to do here in the classroom, which is we are encouraging our teachers to be good models of AI use. And so what we've been trying to get our teachers to do is like if they allow AI, how would a teacher use AI to approach this assignment that they want them to do? And I would love to see an admissions officer get behind and be like, look, if I had to write a personal statement, this is how I would use AI. let me model this behavior for you. If I was going to write my why us essay about, using AI, this is how I would go about that process, right? To just give them guidance and like tell them like, to give them guidance and a model of what good AI behavior looks like. Because I'll be honest, like it's not going away. And if you're just going to tell people you cannot use it, it's like sex and drugs. They're going to do it, but they're just going to do it in a way that is unhealthy. And again, I'm not saying let's just encourage and promote AI all over the place, but like I think just modeling good behavior around this will really help this because the best thing we have to protect our humanity is each other and supporting it. We have great humans thinking about these things, great people getting out there. So get those ideas out there, spread these ideas that Michelle's doing, Emily's doing, all these wonderful counselors across the planet are doing. Because I think, that's what gives me hope is we have good people working on this. I'm hoping that that message gets out there.
Yeah. And right now, unfortunately, the leaders in the room are not leading. I think a lot of universities, I think a lot of deans of admission don't understand how important this issue is, that this is something you guys are facing every single day with students that are standing right there in front of you. And they're so distanced from that often. They only see it in, maybe it's in the essays or maybe, and their office isn't using it, according to many of them, that no, wait, we don't use it. All our processes work perfectly without it, which talk to the newest employee in your office. They've figured out way better processes using this technology. And so, yeah, Scott, I'm grateful that you said that. I just think it's really important that more universities step up to the plate and realize this is something that counselors are really struggling with right now
Mhm.
because they don't have that guidance and they could do a lot better, job of helping with that. So I did put a couple links, before we go here, grab those links. The UK's done it, guys. The UK has come up with an amazing policy that it applies to every university in the UK. We know their system is a little bit different and ours is much more complex, but I do recommend checking that out because honestly, when I looked at that, they even provide a tool to help students. It's like students can put their essay into this tool and it will walk them through how to, make it better and work with it. It's really incredible. So that was that last link there. Thank you, everybody who stayed late. That's really nice of you all. This was such a great conversation, and that you didn't. If you left early, you missed that amazing last 6 minutes there, right? But yeah, join us again for the next one coming up later this month, and we hope to see you all soon on the ground or virtually. Take care. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Emily.
Bye.
Thank you, Emily.